Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Comstock channel. I'm Marlin Bohling with you. Well, we love to bring you information related to agriculture, and it's a pleasure having you on board. I am honored this time to be able to talk with a gentleman who happens to be on our tour that's going on in Brazil right now. That's been going on for a couple of weeks. And we have Erik Oberbroeckling with us, and he hails from, I believe, eastern Iowa. Erik, you might explain where you are from and how did you end up on the tour this year?
You bet, Marlin. So yeah, eastern Iowa and northeast Iowa to be exact. Little town, Garnavilla. We're about an hour north of Dubuque, Iowa, 2 hours west of Madison, Wisconsin. We can see the Wisconsin bluff line from the farmstead. So right in that northeast part of the state, rolling hills, not what people typically expect of Iowa. Regarding how I got on the trip, always had a fascination or wanting to go to Brazil more than just as a tourist destination. Wanted to actually see the agriculture. You always hear a lot of things about Brazilian ag. They're our new competitor. They're going to put us out of business. So no better way than to see it than boots on the ground, firsthand tour. Here we are.
Is this your first time then?
First time in Brazil, yes.
Okay, so give me your overall thoughts first of your impression of the country and the soybean production areas you've seen so far.
Overall thoughts. I expected big, large, the flat. We're in Mato Grosso now, and that's definitely the I states of the Brazil. It's your Indiana, Iowa, Illinois, of Brazil, basically. That is exactly what I pretty well expected it, but you can't fully understand or grasp it until you're actually here and see it firsthand. Your field sizes of 1,000 hectares, 2,500 acres. That's Dakota stuff here in the U.S. You don't see that in parts of Iowa, Illinois. Just the sheer size and scope is what's hard to grasp without physically being here and seeing it firsthand.
Well, a lot of people talk about how there were drought concerns in Brazil, but it's hard to use a big blanket statement like that, isn't it? Because that country is so large. That's like saying you're having a drought in the U.S. when maybe you were having a drought maybe at Lubbock, Texas, and saying that you had a drought in Ohio. I mean, it's just so big. It's hard to talk in generalities about that entire country, isn't it?
That's very true. You're talking about a huge landmass. We started off a little bit further southeast in the state of Minas Gerais. Those beans down there, they're single crop beans. They're not mature yet, but they look phenomenal from the road. We walked out in them. They look like they should be 60, 70 bushel soybeans. Up here in Mato Grosso, every farm operation we visited with, upper 40s, low 50s with a range of 20 to 70 bushel per acre. Compare that to last year, a lot of mid 60 farm averages last year is what they were experiencing. So definitely, the dry weather did hurt soybeans. They've got good height to them. They look like they should be 60, 70 bushel beans, but kind of like we say back in the U.S., until you put the combine out in the beans, it's always hard to visually judge how beans are going to perform.
What kind of stage would you say the beans are in right now?
Here in Mato Grosso, we see everything from full-blown harvest activity. The operations that are trying to double crop plant corn or double crop plant soybeans, they're full on in the midst of harvest. One 30,000 acre farm we visited, they've only got 2,500 acres left to harvest. Soybeans down here typically desiccated or sprayed to kill them so they can get them harvested sooner to allow your double crop planting to get going on a timely manner. Further south and east, the beans are probably that R4, R5, probably R5, R6 stage right now. Probably sometimes in the next month, they should be fit to harvest.
From your perspective, what surprised you the most about what you have found so far now?
I would have to say the surprising takeaways from this trip, I said, the overall sheer size and scale of everything's bigger down here. That's probably the number one takeaway. Infrastructure, you always hear lack of rail, lack of river transportation. That definitely is very noticeable. Trucks, and more trucks everywhere. Everywhere you turn around and look, there's truck traffic. I think this would be a great place to run a diesel repair shop. There's all kinds of trucks everywhere down here. Everything moves by truck. I was somewhat surprised, more commercial grain storage than I expected to see. But that being said, there's only, as we've been told about Brazil, has storage capacity for about 15% of their actual crop. So a lot of it still needs to move through port at harvest time. But there is a fair amount of commercial grain elevator type, your Cargills, your Bungies of the world have commercial country-style elevators out in the middle of soybean country. That was probably more surprising, or I didn't expect to see that.
I know in the plains in the Midwest, you will see a small town every 8 or 10 miles. Is that the case out there too?
No, not here. A definition of a small town here is 100,000 people, probably 100,000 to 500,000 people. So you don't see your towns of 700, 800 people in the country elevator dotted everywhere in the countryside here. Most of the farm operation we visited, we're on paved state roads for a good chunk of the way out of the cities or towns we're staying in. The last probably 20 to 40 kilometers into the farm off the main road, that's when you see your classic red dirt road, rough terrain, probably driving 30, 40 miles an hour, and that's with our tour bus. I can only imagine what semi-loaded 160,000 pounds is going to drive on those roads to get back up to a main road.
You have talked about the rain and the lack of rain in some areas. From what you can tell, how would you rate the soil that you have seen so far compared to the soil you would have back in Iowa? I hear so much talk about the fact that it can't hold much water. Would you agree with that now?
I would tend to agree with that. Definitely more of a sandy loam profile. Iowa typically, your black dirt, higher clay content, a lot of redder looking soil down here in this part of the world. And we probably the last couple of days, in the hotel in the morning, it'd be pouring rain in the hotel in the morning. We probably got a quarter or half inch or better rain in the morning. By 11 o'clock or noon, combines are combining, so it's dried off enough you can run a combine across the field, not leave a footprint.
Really? Wow, that is kind of eye-opening. So did you get a chance to talk to the locals and get their attitude about how the crop is this year and what the profitability will be?
Yeah, we had a few farm visits here, one this morning and into this afternoon, actually. Their cost of production, U.S. dollars, this does not include the land cost. They were around $400 U.S. dollars an acre cost of production on soybeans. The double crop corn is about $300 an acre. But keep that in mind, down here, soybeans are about $9 a bushel. So 50 bushel beans, $9 a bushel, you can do the quick math there. There's some profitability to be had there, but it's not profitability of the last couple of years, similar to what we're probably starting to go through in the U.S. So we're coming off a banner streak here of 2 to 3 very profitable years, and we're heading into leaner times. The sentiment down here is very much the same from the farm community.
Anybody talking about the real currency exchange rate with the dollar right now?
That conversation never really came up as a hot button item, Marlin. Obviously, the exchange rate is always a big deal. You're dealing a lot of things are dollarized down here. Or if you want to buy real estate, they sell real estate in sacks of soybeans rather than reals or dollars. So that's a natural hedge against inflation.
So what do you think now when you get home? What are you going to change, if anything, as a result of your experience down in Brazil?
Load up the wagon and move down here. No, honestly, it brings everything into perspective that you're in the U.S. Everybody looks to the U.S. We're the country the world looks at or looks up to, so to speak, for the most part. What this trip really does here is just reemphasize that we're not the only player in town anymore. From a production standpoint, they're still, you always hear in the U.S. they're not making any more land. You go to a farm auction, the auctioneer cries, they're not making any more of it. Buy it, get the hand in the ear, boys. Well, they are making more farmland down here. That statement doesn't hold water. They're making more farmland here, not necessarily in the U.S. So that kind of changes the perspective a little bit. That we have a growing worldwide population, but there still is real estate available to feed that population elsewhere. Just it's not in the U.S., but it does exist.
I actually heard someone make the comment earlier in the week that there could be as many as 90 million acres in Brazil that could be torn up that have been like rangeland in the past. And they're talking about reconditioning that ground and turning it into farm ground. That could be kind of a formidable thought if that's true. Have you heard anybody talking about that, breaking up new ground?
Yes, that is true. One of the farm manager down here was actually on the bus this last few days, kind of is serving as a guide to get us out in the fields, hit with the right operations to visit with. And a state northeast of here, he's talking about clearing 75,000 hectares that is pasture rangeland now that could definitely be brought into production. Is it going to be super, 70 bushel soybeans the first year or two? No. But with enough lime application and fertilizer over the course of 2-3 years, that ground could become very, very productive.
Have you been in areas where they do Safrinha corn production or not?
Yes, where we're at right now, everybody is either Safrinha corn or Safrinha cotton, depending upon the operation, where they are, location and proximity to a cotton gin, etc. I mean, lots of double crop corn going in. Typically, this area here, we've been told roughly half of the soybean acres will be double cropped into either corn or cotton. Most of the soybeans we've seen come off now, those farmers are 100% double crop operators. That's why they're harvesting the beans a little bit on the earlier side, because usually the middle of 15th is kind of the drop dead. The 15th of February, I should say, is the drop dead date on when they like to get the double crop or the Safrinha corn crop planted. Some operators will plant up till the 1st of March, but early mid-February is the target timeline to have the Safrinha corn crop in the ground.
Is there any talk about concern about not having enough moisture to get that second crop of corn put in or not?
That does not seem to be an issue. They've they caught moisture as of late. The moisture came too late to really help the soybean crop, but they've got enough moisture here to at least get the seed off and run and germinate, so on and so forth. As you mentioned earlier, the water holding capacity of the soil is not what we have in the upper Midwest. So really they will rely more on rains coming after the crop's planted, more so than trying to utilize banked water in the soil, so to speak, because the soil down here does not have that water holding capacity.
Okay. Well, we have to wonder if they would crank out a big Safrinha corn crop. Can you imagine how much pressure that would put on the U.S. corn price?
That definitely is something to worry about. Typical yields on the Safrinha corn crop. A lot of the producers we talk to here are hoping for that 130 to 140 U.S. bushels an acre. Realistically, I think 100 to 110 this year might catch it. A few of them are a little bit pessimistic with their yield outlook, given the fact that their soybean crop was probably 10 to 15% off of what it's been the last 3 to 4 years.
Have you had any obstacles as far as getting into the country, out of the country, moving around the country with that change in leadership?
No, it really was very seamless to get into the country. They were supposed to require visas to get in addition to a passport. They dropped that a week ahead of when we left. I think a bunch of us on this trip were trying to get their visas lined up, and just a back and forth exchange, back and forth via emails. And finally, they scrapped that till April. So, no, standard passport, welcome down here to get here, and life's good.
So how many have been on your tour this year?
I believe there's roughly 20 of us on the trip this year, Marlin.
Okay, it's a nice sized group.
You
All
bet.
right. So takeaway before you head back to the U.S. here?
Takeaways, just everything is definitely said. I use the word larger a lot. It's not like a broken record here, but big, eye-opening. They're definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with. If they could get their infrastructure as far as rail, the river system is what it is. You're not going to rebuild rivers, but if they get a rail system put in and avoid having to haul grain 600, 700, 800 miles to port via truck, that could definitely be a game changer. Double crop corn and or cotton. If they can get genetics figured out to up that yield, from that 120, 30 to get the 170 to 180 range on corn, that's a game changer. We definitely need to find, it's going to definitely change how things operate in the U.S. regarding our profitability. And a lot of Brazil's really aligned themselves on the corn crop with China as far as being a home for where a lot of their product goes, which pushes us to the side, essentially, if Brazil is China's best friend.
I was just going to say, yeah, China has really invested heavily in their infrastructure there. And I just wondered if you had seen evidence of that or not on your trip.
There's a few commercial elevators you see the Chinese writing or Mandarin wrote on the building. So, there's definitely a Chinese presence in that regard.
Interesting stuff. Well, Erik, thanks for talking with us, and safe travels on your way back. All right.
Thanks, Marlon. You take care.
I appreciate it very much. Well, thank you, Erik. Erik Oberbroeckling joining us, and he is from Iowa. He's on our Comstock tour in Brazil this year. Look forward to more conversations about their experience on that trip. Well, thanks for joining us here today. For producer Brianne Hendrickson, I'm Marlin Bohling. See you later on the Comstock channel.
You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok.